Well, today is August 24th, 2016, and we are interviewing Joshua Huddleston in Taylorville, Illinois. Joshua is 37 years old, having been born on February 11th, 1979. My name is Sue Burkholder, and I will be the interviewer. And may I call you Joshua?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would you please, for the recording, state what war and branch of service that you served?
I served in OIF through 06 through 08 in the surge in the Army.
Okay. All right. Well, I would like to start when, actually, way back to when you were born. If you could just say when and where you were born, and maybe tell us a little bit about your parents, their occupation, and any siblings that you might have had.
Okay. I was born in Champaign-Urbana, and I was raised up in Mahomet, Illinois. And my father's Roger Huddleston, and my mother's Margot Huddleston. And my mother was a house mother, and my father worked in the Manufactured Housing Association and sold manufactured homes. I have three brothers that are all older, and that's Matt, Bert, Joe, myself, and then I have a younger sister named Debbie Huddleston, or Debbie Janzewski now.
Okay. Did you have any other family members that served in the military?
Yes, I did. I had a grandfather that served in the end of World War II in the Army Air Corps, before there was even an Air Force. And then I had an uncle that served in the Navy. And then my other grandfather on my mom's side was in the Navy also.
Okay.
And I can trace our lineage in the military all the way back to the Civil War. And my aunt has done some my Aunt Jean has done some historical research, and they actually, Cranner Center did a dedication to my family for military service.
That's nice. So, before you entered the service and you signed on the dotted line, as we say, what were you doing and what led you to join the military, and why did you choose the branch that you did?
I was a subcontractor for just doing odds and ends, like remodeling mainly, with my brother as a small business, and also doing night school because I wanted to become a firefighter. And to become a firefighter, you got to be an EMT. And so I was taking my EMT class, and that just really fascinated me about being able to save a life. And at the same time, at the end of taking my class, my friend had called me around a little bit before Christmas, and I was telling him that I became a medic in the EMT. He's like, man, he was in the Army, and he was like, hey, we really need medics right now. And I was telling my best friend was telling me what to expect if I did, but the Army really needs medics, and that they're always on a short supply of medics. And that inspired me to not only make a difference just in my community, I can make a difference in the world. And so within 3 months, I had joined the Army and signed the dotted line, and I was in on February, I think 5th of that year, following year. So it was my best friend that I had gone. I know I'd never see my best friend or get stationed with him, but that was all right because I felt like I had a higher calling to make a difference in the world.
Very good. So you have signed and you've joined up and you're heading to basic training. Tell us about your experience as you were going in and how you were feeling as you were going to basic training, and then those first few days.
First off, my grandfather, he said, "This is going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done, and whatever you do, don't volunteer in basic training, and because you won't like the jobs." But so I went. It was my first day in basic training, and they call it the shark tank, or basically a shark pool where everybody's standing, in a group, evenly spaced out, and there's a bunch of drill sergeants from everywhere, and they're yelling at you, doing all their lines, and some are funny, some are, you get intimidated by others. I mean, it's a very intimidating process. They're meant to break you down and build you back up. And I was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and for my basic training. And on my first day there, there was a drill sergeant yelling at me saying, "Hey, stand on that white dot." And I was like, moved around. I didn't see any white dot. And he said, "Stand on that white dot." And I moved around. I still didn't see any white dot. He's like, "Get down and start pushing." And so I'm doing push-ups, and I see this little white dot. I'm like, "Oh, that white dot," And I get up, and then there's another drill sergeant that comes, because I'm at the position of attention, and he's like, "What did you do before you came in the Army?" And I was like, "I was a medic, drill sergeant." "You're not a medic," thinking that, I haven't done my AIT. That's what they're thinking. And I was like, "No, I was an EMT before I came in, drill sergeant." And he's like, "You're going to need a medic when I'm done with you. And get down and start pushing." So there I am, start doing more push-ups. And it was very, very hard, because it did break me down, mentally, physically. And I'm like, why did I do this? And then I remember that if my grandfather could do it, I could do it. And if I'm less than 1% of America that's trying to do this, and I always kept on reminding myself of my goal, why I was trying to do this, and it was to make a difference in the world. And it wasn't to go ahead and fight a war, because I wasn't, yes, I'm a soldier first, but it was me wanting to take care of people and wounded people, and in that way in the world, because I'm not only going to take care of our soldiers, we're going to take, I know in battle, we're going to take care of other, civilian casualties, and that's my way of giving back to the world. And there'd be times when I'm just constantly was telling myself, what am I doing, and I had to just keep reminding myself, and they tell you to stare straight, and at the position of attention, and you'd stand there for minutes on end without any other instruction. So you got to start to counting how many blocks are on the side of a building, and so that's what you would do to keep your mind, kind of numb and focused. And basic training was amazing. I thanked all my drill sergeants at the end. And got to learn discipline, and helped me with more integrity and perseverance, and helped me draw upon the strengths that I didn't know that I had, and refined me into a great soldier. And I loved the soldiering aspects of it, as in going and doing field exercise training and the physicalness of it, and how the strategy of it. It was really great. I really enjoyed basic training.
Okay. I always ask what people think of the food during basic training, and well, what did you think of
the food? The food was great, but you didn't have much time, and I mean they fed you really, really well, because you're going to burn so many calories throughout the day, and and you just try to eat as much as you can, as fast as you can. And I mean, I went to the point of like knowing that I needed calories, that I had some salad dressing left over, so I put it in between 2 pieces of bread and eat that, because I knew I needed the calories. I mean, and then I saw people that were in my platoon, that one guy in particular had to lose weight to even come to basic training, and then when he got to basic training, he lost so much weight and got cut up, and it was remarkable because of the dedication that he did himself, and he knew what he needed to do even before he came, and then he continued that path throughout. And we couldn't eat enough to get fat. It would all go to our muscles and cut up, and they pushed water upon us. We had to drink at least 5 canteens a day to go ahead, and it would flush our system and our muscles out. My drill sergeant called it, you got to drink all this water to push out the bad blood, because atrophy in your muscles and would form, so you had to push that out and clean your system out, and you'd be ready for the next day of getting what we called smoked. And we'd get smoked so much that there was this room that they called the war room, and the whole room was painted black. The windows were painted black, and I don't know if they turned on the heat, but they'd shut off the lights, and then they smoke us in the dark, and there was so much sweat that the walls would start to sweat, and then the ceiling would start to sweat and drip of sweat, because they smoked us for so long and so hard, and like it was miserable, but it was always all about pushing you beyond your limits and making a new limit, and knowing that, letting people know in their minds that you can do this eventually, and you're proud of yourself after that, smoking.
Right. Did you make any friendships during basic that have lasted past basic training?
I have not, because we got all split apart. Now, yeah, I have, just because of my course through my military career. Now, throughout my military career, I saw people that were in my basic training that we'd get together and talk, and that was very enjoying, very much fun, and then we'd talk about, hey, do you remember this, do you remember that, and it was really good.
Okay, so you have completed basic training, and did you go on leave, or did you just go straight to advanced training?
I actually did go on. I got to my AIT and then went on leave because my grandfather, that was in the Army Air Force, had passed away, and they gave me leave because he helped raise me, him and my grandmother for a short period of my time, my life. But so they let me go ahead and go, and so it was really an honor to be there. And I was in full dress when I went, and it was really an honor to hear taps played from my grandfather, the flag folded, and it was surreal, I guess. And that was my time home before my AIT.
Okay. And then you went through AIT. What was your advanced training?
My advanced training was to be a 68 whiskey combat medic, and one of the very first few days there, I mean, they smoked us again all day long, the very first day, and then it was maybe 2 days later, we had went to the chapel, and my whole unit went to the chapel, and there was the chaplain and the lieutenant colonel and the sergeant major, and since we're medics, they said, all right, how many people signed up for college? And they raised their hands. Certain people raised their hands, and then he said, now raise your hand if you were told you're just going to work in a hospital. And there's a couple people that raised their hand. He's like, well, get that out of your mind, because you're soldier first, and then you may get put in a hospital, you may not. And now you would more or less, well, I'll get to that. Well, more or less, even though you're a female, you still get put in harm's way before they had just released, that women are able to go into combat positions. And they still got all the training we got as to be a combat medic. It's like that is your main role. After being a soldier, you're a combat medic. You may get put in a hospital, you may be put into cash, but a bunch of you that are men are going to be stuck in combat units. And so they were just letting people know that, you may have signed up for college, you may have been told that you were going to be stuck in a hospital, you'd be safe. He was just letting people realize the severity of it and what you're gonna have to do. And that was within the first week. And the first part of it was this was down at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And then the first part of our training was become an EMT. Well, I had already had my EMT, and I got to come in as an E4 specialist because of that. And so these people that were going through the EMT training, it was a brush up, but I got to go ahead and skip that part of it and go advance to the next unit that was in a part of the combat. They were actually at the end of the EMT part, and they were getting ready to get into the combat medic part. So, I mean, that was totally awesome, because we worked with what they call simulant, which are like simulators of mannequins that are lifelike, to where they show you how to go ahead and crike somebody, which is like if their throat is burnt and their airways burnt, so you can go ahead and make a slice in their esophagus and put a crike in it. And we did anything. We did all kinds of advanced emergency medical techniques, and that even I thought were awesome. You know, that and normal EMT is not allowed to do. And that's like we learned medicine, we like some pharmacology, we learned how to give IVs, and we learned all kinds of stuff, because what happened on these sim men were hooked up to computers, so you could like there'd be an arterial bleed on an arm or a leg, and you had to go ahead and put a tourniquet on it to make it stop bleeding, and it would bleed until you did it right. And it was just like pressure sensitive, and you know, in case, like, let's say somebody falls and they break a rib and it punctures one of your lungs, and your lungs fill up with air, let's say pneumothorax, and so they tell you how to use a IV needle to go ahead and puncture the chest wall, and air will come out, so your lung reinflates. And they show you how to do that in certain different places on where it's happened. And I mean, that's a life-saving procedure right there, because they suffocate, you know. And sometimes blood will get in between, because there's a pleural cavity. It's in between your chest wall and your lung, and the blood will fill up, and it'll push your lungs, so you can't take a full breath. And so there's ways to drain that. They showed us how to do chest tubes. I had a surgeon that was in Iraq that was one of our doctors, and he showed us how to do central lines, and taught us also how to do a bunch of antibiotics, how they worked and stuff like that. And he, you know, as if he felt confident that you could do stuff in the Army. And then we had combat scenarios where in AIT, where we had to go ahead and, you know, lift a person, you know, by ourselves. They showed us proper techniques to go ahead and lift somebody without hurting ourselves, using like a fireman's carry. But you not only got to lift a person, you got to lift a bunch of gear. You got your gear on, and you got to do it safely, because you don't want to hurt yourself and you don't want to hurt them, you know, because they're already hurt. Don't hurt them anymore. And it was in combat scenarios, and we were timed. It was very grueling, and but it was an awesome experience, because that just furthered my knowledge. And I mean, knowledge is irreplaceable. That's one thing you can't take from somebody.
So, okay, you finished then a successful AIT, I assume, and then what was your first duty station?
My first duty station, I had actually, before that, I had ended up hurting my back at AIT, and they had suggested that at AIT that because I was ready, I was going to go for Special Forces medic, and they had suggested that I go ahead and drop that and drop airborne. because I had signed up in the very beginning for airborne. And so they said the impact on my back would make things worse. So I went ahead and signed off on not going to airborne school. So I happened to go ahead and ended up staying in Texas, going to Fort Hood into the 1st Cavalry Division, and actually that was the same division as my friend that told me to go ahead and that they needed medics. And so his unit was a couple units down the road, and so we ended up hanging out a lot, and I felt like that. It was like God. So put us together. I mean, was like a brother, and was like a brother to me, before and during and after my service. And my first experience of being in the unit, I was in 17 Cav, which is actually General Cussard's old unit, and I felt that was an honor. You know, there was definitely you could tell that even in everybody that was there, the commanders were very honored about that too, because it's a very famous unit. If you've seen We Were Soldiers, that is the same unit, 17 Cav, and they were the 1st Air Cav. Now, different units get reflagged once in a while, so I was in an armored bunch of cavalry scouts as a medic, and when I got there, I was like, wow, this is totally different from basic training and AIT. I actually have a life, you know. Then, I mean, because like I'd walk so much it would be like the left, right, left would be constantly in my head, because that's how much they tore me down and built me back up. And that I still do that to this day, even, you know, I think about it. And on the left, right, left when I'm walking, and but I was like, man, this is the Army. And because it's just not, you know, there's a lot of self-integrity that you gotta do. You know what you need to do. Now it's up to you to go ahead and go forth and imply with what you've learned with your, you know, be at the right time, right place, right uniform, and know your ranks, and take commands, and also try to be a leader in yourself, you know, and think for yourself. But that was my first experience when I first got to my unit.
Okay. And how long were you there at Fort Hood?
At Fort Hood, I was there from 06 to 08. I went ahead and at the end of 06, October, it's actually on my grandmother's birthday that we left to go to Iraq. I went from Fort Hood, and then we went to Kuwait, staged in Kuwait for a month, and then oh boy, Kuwait's hot and sandy. It was not very fun at all. and then we went to Iraq, and I went to Balad, and then from Balad we went to Camp Taji, and that's where my service was. And when I got there, it stank. Oh man, I can smell it now. It stunk very bad. And we showed up at night and got situated at night in our trailers. And I was very nervous at first. I think if anybody will say when they first get in the country, they're a little hesitant, a little nervous. And within the first 2 weeks, there was a missile that went ahead and was fired into our camp, and it landed right where our vehicles were at, which was probably about 500 yards, or not 500, like probably about 500 feet from where I slept to the vehicles. And the missile hit, but it didn't blow up. See, they like to go ahead and shoot anything and everything at us. If they know it works or it doesn't, they shoot it at us. And so you just see this smoking missile, and that's where I'm like, all right, I'm definitely in a combat zone. And that was kind of came to reality and grasp with that of my own mortality right there. And I was in the aid station for a while. We saw for a couple months. I was in the aid station, and then they went ahead and, like, people that were injured, you know, because they would mortar us constantly, and we'd bring people that got hit by the mortars, we'd work on them, and that just the ones that weren't major that didn't need surgery, because we had a place where people would go that needed surgery, that it was just like, it was bad. And then some would come to our aid station, and we'd pick out shrapnel or help with the cuts and stuff like that, and also do sick call, you know, for over, I'd say 800 people at least. There would be probably about 6 of us in the aid station that would do sick call for about 800 people. If they were sick, we'd be able to prescribe them medications. I was able to do, I ended up doing everything from IVs to helping people cut off warts, to going ahead and stapling one of my soldiers' heads together, to going ahead and lancing a hemorrhoid. And you know, so I mean, it was and to doing a central line. It was, I got a lot of medical experience out of that, and through that became very confident. And I was there for a couple months, and then the president had issued that everybody had to go ahead and was extended, and they called it the surge. So we were going to have to end up doing an 18-month tour, to anywhere from 18 to 20-month tour, and a lot of people didn't like it, you know, because they wanted to be back home, you know. but we know we had to do what we had to do, and I came to grips with that. I got lucky, and I got put in for a R&R to go to Qatar, because we have a base in Qatar, and they let us have like 2 beers a night. This was for 4 days, or 3 nights, 4 days, and we had a chance to go out into the market, all supervised, wearing plain clothes. And we also got given a chance to go skiing, or just a bunch of time to relax and just be away from the stress. Other people had chances to go to some of Saddam's palaces and relax for like 3 or 4 days, and I got lucky because there was rainstorms at the end of my time, so I got to actually spend about 5 days in Qatar. So it was really nice, and we got to people from different branches, and you got to become friends with people and hang out. And yeah, you were sleeping on cots, not really beds, but hey, you know what? You didn't have to worry. I got to go ahead and call my my hometown newspaper, and they did an interview. They set that up, and so my hometown newspaper, I made the front page, and Muhammad Citizen, and did a big long story of just everything I've been through and what we've done. And I came back, and then I went ahead and got put into a line unit, and then that's pretty much a combat unit that's in my unit, I should say, like a platoon or squad. I would be with the first lieutenant or second lieutenant, and went out on the missions, and sergeant first class. And when I was there, we did civil affairs missions where we'd show up at a school or a clinic, and the clinics never had anything really, and very much medicine, not very much staff. This is a battle-torn country. A lot of their own people were setting off vehicle-borne IEDs, or doing suicide bombers and killing their own people. And we'd show up and say, hey, bring all your sick and wounded. And we just come there with chest upon chest of medications, and we'd go ahead and see up to, like, one time 300 people in one day in a couple hours. We'd have security around the area that we were seeing people. Some of it was very heart-wrenching, because people that were paralyzed, they'd be like, can you help me? And there's nothing we can do. And but we did so much good. And people that were very sick, we were also able to give diagnoses to people and say, hey, you need to seek further help wherever you can, and this is what you have. People that needed antibiotics, people that had infections from shrapnel or burn wounds. We dressed them up, gave them pain medication like ibuprofen and antibiotics to go ahead and stave off infection, because infection, in a third world country like that, an infection's going to go ahead and kill you. And then they put me into another unit, which was a support detachment. And we went ahead and took supplies to all our different forward operating bases that we manned throughout our sector. So, that's every day taking a route, different routes, and hoping that you're not going to get hit by a roadside bomb or ambushed. Was a very real thing that was always on the back of somebody's mind. Didn't talk about it, but it was there. We'd go ahead and go to communities and set up barricades into the communities so someone can't just drive a car straight in there and then blow up into the middle of a group of people, or into their bazaar, or into a building. We'd show up with food, we'd show up with books, we'd show up with bunches of clean water, we'd just all kinds of stuff. And that's one thing that upset me, is that I know back here on the news they would always show the bad things, and they'd never show the good things that we did. And it's very upsetting, because they want to go ahead and be like, well, this one person did this. Well, what about the hundreds of people that were doing the right thing, and they didn't bring? That's never in the news. That's where we got people over in Afghanistan still to this day, and they don't tell people about all the good stuff we're doing over there. They just want to go ahead and because negativity sells. And they asked for a volunteer to go ahead on this log pack, which is to go get supplies from another base, and the base was Balad, and it was probably about 60, 80 miles away from ours, and from Camp Taji. And oh, by the way, Camp Taji was the old base of Chemical Ali, which was Saddam Hussein's guy that helped them create actually the weapons of mass destruction, that of like mustard gas and stuff like that. That's so there was weapons of mass destruction at one time. That Congress gave them such a long time to go ahead and be like, hey, we're coming in. Gave them enough time to get rid of them. That's my opinion. I mean, but back to where I was volunteered for a log pack. I was like, hey, my best friend that I told you about, that told me to come in to the military, that they needed medics. This was his base. So, and I got there because I volunteered. It took us a couple hours to get 80 miles, and my sergeant first class went ahead and I told him, hey, this is my best friend. It's like a brother to me. And he was a specialist also. And my sergeant first class that was over me said, hey, we don't need you right now for anything until tomorrow before we leave. So you can go ahead and hang out with him and sleep wherever you want with in his trailer. So I slept on the floor of my friend's trailer, in his little room and with his very small, area to sleep in, because a trailer would be cut, a small single wide trailer would be cut up in 3 sections, and then 2 soldiers would be in each little section, and then you got all their gear, you got their bed each, and so he showed me around Balad. Sometimes he'd be on QRF, which is he was a quick reaction force. Even though he was artillery, you're a soldier first.
Mm-hmm.
So he was this time he was basically doing patrols around Balad, and also doing his. Everybody would have a point in time where you had to do QRF. It was quick reaction force, in case somebody was engaged in combat. They would come out and help them, and so sometimes I'd just wait around either in his trailer or at his unit, and so I got to talk with their medics, got to learn experiences from them, and then ask them what they did on certain things, and vice versa. So it was knowledge sharing, and it was really great to go ahead and spend time with my best friend. I mean, it was irreplaceable, and I got to do that probably about 4 times. And on the 4th time coming back, we came upon, my vehicle got hit by a roadside bomb, an IED, and hit my head. We were all right for the most part, and then a little bit later we came upon, we had contact on our left-hand side while we were driving. There was another convoy in front of us, and we went ahead and we all engaged contact left, and this was at night, and every third round is a tracer round, which is it's a red tracer, and it's a bullet. It still will shoot, but it lets you know that you're shooting in the right direction. You have night vision goggles, and that go ahead and just lets you know you're shooting in the right direction. And so I saw, as weird as this may sound, it was actually beautiful, because there was it looked like Star Wars, because there was 8 50 cals going, a bunch of 249s, and a bunch of other small arms fire, and we went ahead and ended up breaking contact, and it probably took us 3 times as long, because we went so slow to get back. And even to this day, even though I got hit by an IED, and the jolt of it hurt my back, even made things worse. Me hitting my head, which created a TBI, traumatic brain injury. I'd do it all over again, because I got to see my best friend, and make sure he was all right. And we talked to each other we had pay for internet service over there. We wanted personal, so I sent him emails, and that also helped stay in contact with other family members, and I let him know, and he was freaking out. I didn't tell my family at all that I had gotten hit, because I didn't want to go ahead and scare them, and until after I came back. And then there'd also be times when we'd be sleeping and we had artillery shells going out, and the whole trailer would be shaking, and you're like thinking, is that incoming or outgoing? Because if it's incoming, there's places to go where you can take shelter, and then sometimes you'd wake up and realize that it's outgoing, and you're just like, go get them, boys, and then roll back over, and go back to sleep. And it was definitely, I'd do it all over again. Even though I got hurt, I'd do it all over again. I'd not even a second thought. And there's probably, from where I slept to probably 150 feet to the right of my sleeping trailer, my pod, there was a male and a female shower trailer, and there was incoming mortar fire, and it totally destroyed the female trailer, and there was one female taking a shower and another female using the restroom, and they were scratched up, but they were alive. They stayed in country, and I give it to them. They were very sound mind. It was a second lieutenant and a sergeant E5. Their mentality was still good, and they wanted to go ahead and go on with their service, and it was, that also is, man, that could have been a little bit closer, and that could have been mine, because there was people that, incoming would take out a whole sleeping trailer. We had a place there was this coffee shop on base, and incoming, that was right next to our little PX, in there, and it blew that up to smithereens, and lost a couple foreign nationals that were there from the Philippines. There was once or twice I went and talked to the chaplain, because I'm definitely God-fearing, and I just wanted reassurances on certain things.
Sure. So it sounded like it was pretty active while you were there, but as you were coming toward the end of your time, how long did you spend in Afghanistan?
If it's Iraq?
Or Iraq, yeah.
I spent 16 and a half months. And there was a lot of times when we wouldn't get a lot of sleep, and that taking Benadryl would help a person sleep. And there was a time when I was not sleeping at all, from nerves and a multitude of other things. Sometimes we had to do missions because they blew up, a car bomb blew up a bridge close to the end of our tour, that crosses the Tigris River. It was the main bridge that connected the north and the south of Iraq, so there was operations to go ahead and non-stop to build a new bridge that the Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers, came in and rebuilt a brand new bridge, except for there was a train trestle we had to drive our trucks over to get there. and that was nerve-wracking. But we'd stayed up. We were still doing all our supply missions to our different fobs, and had to take more things than usual because that's just how it was because of that incident. And I wasn't getting much sleep, and at the end we were doing right seat rides, which means you're training the new people that are coming in, so they'd be riding along with you and train them with you for probably a couple weeks. But what sucked was you knew, because they did it to you when you got there, they'd take advantage of that after those people left and would start bombing them more routes that you thought were safe were not safe, become unsafe. Since you're Army first, and we didn't really have need for many cooks, we had a bunch of cooks in our unit also, and they made them they had them become EOD, which is explosive ordnance disposal. So, and one of the most dangerous jobs, that and being a truck driver, which was also a part of what the unit I was attached to, because they brought all kinds of different supplies to the surrounding communities. So we were very susceptible to ambushes and IEDs, so roadside bombs. And but I mean, we always had security with us, multitudes of gun vehicles, for our security. But they like to go ahead and pick us out.
So as you were coming to the end of your time there, how did you transition back to, did you go back to Fort Hood?
Yes, I went to Fort Hood. Waking up in the morning, where's my gun, where's my eye protection, in that mentality. And because everywhere you went, you had to, because not a gun, your weapon, I'm sorry, and you had to make sure you always had your weapon on you and your eye protection. And it was a habit, but it was a good habit, but it was surreal. You're like, because you'd be driving along. I ended up getting PTSD out of it. You're looking as you're going underneath a bridge, an overpass. You're looking up and seeing if there's people, just because that's what they do. They drop grenades on you when you're going under an overpass, and the paranoia of people around you that are driving. So it was kind of hard, actually. Hard. Some things were harder than others. Some things were easy. And then you're in the States, and you're like, man, none of these people understand, and they never will. And you listen to all the rhetoric on the news and other people's conversations that want to go ahead and have their 2 cents. And it should be this way, and it should be this way. Well, you don't know. Even our rules of engagement, it sucked because we couldn't defend ourselves until we were shot at. Everybody had a gun. Everybody had a weapon. And even if they were pointing it at you, you could not, and even if they just shot it, they had to be shooting it in your direction at you, and before you could engage. And that's we were trying to win the hearts and minds, and a lot of they wanted what we had, but not what we wanted to try to do with them. You know, they wanted our money, they wanted our food, they wanted our barriers that we made for them, so their own people wouldn't kill them. But they didn't want our ideology. They were content on living the way they were living. And even though we're trying to win the hearts and minds, you know, we may have won their hearts and minds, some of them, but they didn't want us there. They wanted to govern themselves. And I don't think that we should have pulled out the way we pulled out here had President Obama, because we pulled out too quick without there being an infrastructure. We should have never disbanded the police and the military. We should have taken a lot, because we ended up putting a lot of the people that were in the heads of the military back into their positions. But we had to retrain all new military, and then some of the military that we let go, we were fighting because they were the insurgents. And then we had to worry about corruption, you know, them going. We couldn't even trust our interpreters, because there are interpreters who are working for the enemy. And we should have been more. Their government and security forces should have been more in place and secured and grounded before we left. And but I mean, like, they didn't want us there. They wanted what we had, but not what the long term.
Well, during your service, I know you listed several medals that you had won. Can you tell us what those were?
My very first medal was I went to JRTC down in Louisiana, Fort Polk, and was to go ahead and get us ready for going into Iraq. And there ended up being a unit that was on patrol. I mean, these are all war games that we're doing, and there was a patrol that got sent out there without extra water, and part of the patrol ended up having to come to the closest, our base, and it became a real situation because they were dehydrated and heat stroke, to where there was 8 of them, and we had to go ahead, and some were foaming at the mouth, you know, from heat stroke. I mean, they were on the verge of dying. And my healthcare, my unit for our little cache that we had, basically, took care of that. And we ended up having this, best training you can get is real life, right? So we ended up taking care of 8 people and that were in heat stroke, and having real air, instead of having simulation, this was the real deal, and calling in air evacuations, and I mean, to where we had to carry them on litters through the woods to where the LZ, the landing zone, was, and I got my first medal for that, which was an Army Achievement Medal, and I ended up getting another achievement medal for some other field exercise training, being exemplary. And there I got an Army Commendation Medal from being in Iraq, and I also got another Army Achievement Medal for when I left the Fort Hood, because I had re-enlisted to go ahead and go to Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Maryland, which is basically Washington, D.C. also, right where it was at, because Capitol Hill was right down the road from it. And actually, before I even left, I was attached to Charlie Company for as Cav Scouts, and our first FTX, after we had gotten done with a break from being from Iraq, we had to do a full battle rattle with all our gear, and then also, so that's my vest, my weapon, a bunch of blanks, because we were doing war games, and then my pack that was 45 pounds or more, and then I had an aid bag, because you got to carry, which is about 20-25 pounds, and I ended up, we were doing a 3-mile hike straight up a hill, and to get to where our area was, and I got probably about 100 feet, and it was really rocky, this road that we were doing this ruck march on, and I had rolled my ankle, and I couldn't do it, and it comes to, they're like, oh, come on, Doc, you can do it, and I'm like, I cannot, this absolutely is killing me. And one of my good friends stayed back with me and was like, hey, I'll stay with them until we can get out of here and catch the next ride out. And it took a while, and it happened to be that my cuff on where the ball of my ankle was, my cuff split in half, and my ligaments and tendons shot up into my leg, and so they ended up going ahead and having surgery probably about a month later, but they ended up cutting that whole cuff out and giving me a cadaver cuff. So I'm thinking maybe I'm hoping that it was another soldier's cuff, he made it so I could walk again. And they gave me a new cuff on my ankle, screwed it in, pulled down the ligaments and tendons in my leg, pulled it down to my ankle and stapled it. And I had 30 days convalescence leave. I was engaged to a girl at the time, and we had went to Waco, Texas, which was not too far away, and I saw a truck that T-boned another truck, and I told her, hey, I gotta stop. I since duty, that when I see something like that, I gotta stop. The vehicle was on fire. One of the vehicles was on fire. I started using my crutches to try to get to him, through my crutches, and started running as fast as I can. Pulled out one of the people out of the vehicles, away from the fire, and there was another person that had stopped, pulled out another person that was the passenger, and the other people in the other truck, they came out upon themselves, and I was treating him. He had cuts all over his face, and so just trying to stop and control bleeding, and waited until EMS and first responders got there, and so it just I wanted to throw that in because even though you're off duty, you're still always on duty. You're 24/7. That's the way I feel as a medic. Then I went to Walter Reed, and I had a friend that was actually I had two friends that were already there, and one was head of a clinic there, and I went in front of a master sergeant with my friend, and they ended up, the master sergeant was head of the Department of Nursing, and he ended up pulling me and putting me in this section, which made me become the evening night supervisor of Department of Nursing in the evening. So basically, even though I was a sergeant, because I had made my sergeant in Iraq, I was a sergeant, but I was rated as an E7 Sergeant First Class because that's the position I filled, and because they saw potential in me. And so basically I was the eyes and ears for the sergeant major and the master sergeant for the hospital at night, that have to do with the wards, the different clinical wards. And that job, I compiled all the reports from all the different units and gave it to all the chiefs and department heads in the morning, because they had their round table in the morning, and they had to go ahead and they were discussing everything. And also I helped coordinate all the air evacs coming from Afghanistan and Iraq, all the people that were injured would go to Landstuhl, Germany, and then get separated. The burn patients would go to Brooke Army Medical Center down in Texas, and the amputees and other people that were like on life support and stuff would come to Walter Reed, and I'd go ahead and help place them, and then also go out when they came there, we'd go ahead and have litter teams pulling them off, sticking them on gurneys, and taking them to the units that they needed to go to be, either surgery or just depending on what injuries they had. Sometimes we'd go ahead and have to go to the cast, what we call a cast room, where they got x-rays and bandages had to be replaced, or they had to be put in a cast. So with my ability of being in charge, and being a medic, I got to go ahead and do that and help irrigate wounds, which means cleaning them out and going ahead and wrapping them, and then helping with casts, and that was a great experience. And then I also, since I was in that position, I also got to volunteer on my extra time down in the emergency room, because this was for retirees. This hospital was for retirees and for their families, and for our wounded and sick soldiers, active duty. And it was a great experience because I can't get rusty, and it would be absolutely amazing because I'd pull a guy off the ambulance, and this ambulance is almost like a converted semi turned into an ambulance that carries 12 people, wounded warriors, and there would be someone that comes with no legs and no arms, and you'd see them in 6 to 9 months doing laps with they'd have new arms and new pair of legs, running around the hospital, outside the hospital. And it's just, indirectly you had a part in that. And then it made me feel proud of myself, the hospital, and my country on how well they're starting to take care of our wounded warriors. And I sit down and talk to some of them because I smoked at the time, and I talked to the families that are there because the military would set up housing for the families, and you talk to them, hey, is everything going all right? Is there anything that you need? Do you have problems with anything? They didn't know what I was doing, but I was just making sure that they were getting what they needed also to be a support to their family member. And I'd also talk to the wounded warriors, and they not only had legs for running, they had legs for walking. Hey, what kind of sport do you want to do? You want to do rock climbing? Oh, they give them a pair of legs for rock climbing, or for swimming, or canoeing, or kayaking, or just legs for anything, and also arms that would do different things. And actually, Walter Reed and John Howard's association worked very closely together. And not John Howard's, but the John Hopkins Hospital, which is one of the #1 hospitals. And they actually did, while I was in the military, did the first arm transplant for a wounded warrior. He had not had arms for, I think, 2 or 3 years, and they worked together to give that man a transplant of new arms. I mean, it was amazing. And then what happened was we were getting ready. The Walter Reed Army Medical Center, they're wanting to go ahead and make the Department of Defense is wanting to go ahead and make it a multi-joint task force hospital. So Bethesda, Maryland, was the naval hospital, and so they did renovations of that and expanded it enormously. And they went ahead and moved Walter Reed Army Medical Center to there, and it became Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. They kept Walter Reed, which was Colonel Walter Reed. And so it was there. What the Department of Defense was trying to do was get everybody in the medical field on all branches, all in the same field. The Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Coast Guard. And that's who we worked with. And I became a evening night supervisor there also. And I ended up catching the eye of my my colonel in what I was doing, and he told me that he wanted me to go ahead and do operations and emergency management and operations, and that was another E7 slot. Since I had hurt myself, I couldn't go ahead and I couldn't go ahead. It was very hard for me to go ahead and advance to my next rank because I made all my PT scores, my physical training. I had maxed out all my education, but my PT scores were low because of my back injury. But I still passed, so I was able to stay in. So I couldn't advance, but they still let me stay in positions that I could go ahead and do. That it was very advanced beyond my pay grade, and they saw the potential in me, and they let me excel. And can I go back? And I'd like to tell you that another good experience that I had.
Sure.
Right after when I first got to Walter Reed, I had took leave for 2 weeks before Christmas on it was 2008, and I was at my parents' house, and it was 2 days before New Year's, and I had heard a screech and crash, and my brother was there. He's older than me, and he was staying over for the next couple of days also. And we opened the door and we see this truck totally wrapped around this tree at this T intersection. And so I just threw on I was in a short sleeve shirt, threw on some pants, some my shoes, ran and went to go see it, what was going on. The truck was totally wrapped around this tree, and the passenger was dead. The driver, he was still alive, and he went ahead but he was drunk. He was unconscious. He was bleeding profusely. You could hear gurgling sounds coming from his throat. So there was a pre-med student that stopped up there, and he said, "Hey, I'm a pre-med student." I'm like, "Well, I'm a EMT that just got, dude, I know what I'm talking about. Just got back from Iraq. Either you can help me or leave." And because he said, "Don't touch the body, don't touch him." I'm like, "Dude, we're gonna touch him." And he ended up leaving, and I ended up opening up his airway, controlling bleeding. First responder got there, helped me with the situation, and then more first responders came, and I was helping them. They used the jaws of life, helped extract him out of the vehicle, and then waited for them to put him in the ambulance, but there was already an air medical, so he was getting air evac'd out. So then they went ahead and got the air evac, took him out. I went to a police officer. I said, "Hey, do you want a statement or anything?" He's like, No, I need you to get out of here." And I was like, "Okay," because I didn't know if they wanted a statement or anything. He's like, "Well, were you here when it happened?" I was like, "No, but I was here afterwards." So I don't think he understood. I was covered in blood, and I went home, washed my hands, and changed my shirt. And the next morning, my brother had called my cousin, my cousin, I wasn't looking for any praise or anything, and they went ahead and my cousin called the newspaper, the News Gazette, and they went ahead and came and asked me for an interview, and I gave them an interview of what happened and a little bit about myself. And I wasn't looking for anything, and but I felt very proud of myself, and but it was, I got all in a day's work. And I went ahead and showed my the guy that was in charge of me, my supervisor, showed him the article, and they put me in for the Vanguard Award, which so I was a contestant for a Vanguard Award. And a Vanguard Award is one soldier out of every branch is put in for is selected for the Vanguard Award, and it's to go ahead and be recognized for above and beyond the duty, and you get recognized by the president. And it felt great just to be nominated for that. I didn't make it, but I felt very, very honored for that.
Well, if you could just, like, in a couple sentences, what is the most positive thing that you've taken away from your service?
The most positive thing? I'd probably say getting to help others and making a difference in the world and in people's lives, and having the intestinal fortitude to deal with the situations that I've come across, because I come across people would always say, man, you're unlucky, because I also came across another person when I was at Walter Reed on my way to work and did life-saving measures, and I'm like, I'm not lucky, I'm not unlucky, I'm very lucky, because I'm in the right place at the right time to go ahead and help people. And without me, that person could have died. And I'm very proud of my military service. I'm very proud of my country, and I'm very proud of the Army, and I'm very proud of the soldiers I was surrounded by. They're amazing people. I still keep in contact with some of them from my combat unit, and even from when I was at Walter Reed, and it was a very great experience, because even when I became a Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, I got made the NCOIC of Emergency Management for the tri-state area for nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare and natural disasters, which is Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. And that's a lot of pressure. But that's a great accomplishment, to be able to say, hey, you can do this. And it was amazing. I got coined by the Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, twice. And then for a retirement award, I got an award from the Secretary of Defense, Joint Service Achievement Medal, for multiple things I did within the little over 2 years that I was in that position. It was amazing.
Good. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time, for telling us your story, and thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity, for letting me go ahead and express everything.
You're welcome.
And give people my story.
You're welcome.